Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views News and I'm Faisal Rehman from our Islamabad studios. As we all know that the 23rd Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif from Pakistan Muslim League N, has been elected as the Prime Minister now. Well, this is the first time that he's going to serve at this post, but other than that, he has been the Chief Minister in Punjab a few times, and I'm sure that he has got enough experience to be the right and suitable candidate for this particular post. Now, having said that, yesterday we did a show on the economic challenges for the government or the government of Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, because we already know that it is not only about PMLN. Now there are about 12, 13 different parties united together to form this particular government that includes Pakistan People's Party, they have JUIF, they have MQM, they have got BAP, and so forth. There are a couple of other parties as well. Now, every party is going to be adjusted, will be given some sort of ministries. But having said that, now the challenges are huge. When you talk about the economic challenges, we did discuss in detail yesterday what sort of issues can be there in front of them. But there is another very important area I think we should also talk about that. That is about the foreign challenges. As we all know, what we have studied, whatever we have learned, that in foreign policy you need to make more friends and reduce the number of your adversaries. But currently, as we all know, that Pakistan was facing a lot of problems in that particular regard, but things did improve over a period of time. But still, having said that, when it comes to United States of America, that is where the problem lies. And obviously, United States of America is a superpower. You cannot afford to be an adversary of the US. Now, how can we change our relations with the Americans in particular? And what about the future of all those countries which were very close, let's say, or rather they are still close, but how to engage them in the future, whether you talk about Russia or a couple of other states. China has always been a very strong support for Pakistan. It is beyond the governments. It is a matter of, I would say, this is a matter between two states. That engagement, I believe, perhaps holds the key. Now, what should be the way forward? How to look after the affairs of FATF in particular, because that is going to be another challenge and a half for the government. So, to talk about that, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. But before that, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first.
Mr. Shehbaz Sharif was elected as 23rd Premier of Pakistan by securing 174 votes. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, after being elected, took the floor of the Assembly and addressed all the concerns and respective expectations of the public regarding rejuvenating the economy and improving the foreign policy. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, in his speech, very aptly synchronized the interdependent aspects of the economy and foreign policy and reiterated that the new government would take steps to make Pakistan an investment haven for the investors, as well as will make all efforts to strengthen the already deep relations between Pakistan and China. He reiterated that government will speed up the slowdown pace of China-Pakistan economic corridor projects. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that the new government will assure good relations with the United States and United Kingdom on equal grounds. The newly elected Prime Minister lamented that Pakistan wants peaceful ties with India, while noting that without solving the lingering Kashmir issue, the relations between the two cannot be strengthened. Meanwhile, he urged Indian Premier Narendra Modi to understand the issues of people living on both sides and to come forward and resolve the Kashmir issue according to the will of the Kashmiris.
Now, we have with us on my right is Nasir Ali Khan Sahab, former ambassador. Thank you very much, Nasir, for your time. And we also have with us Dr. Naazir Mahmood Sahab, senior columnist, writer. Thank you very much, Naazir Sahab, for your time. And on Skype, we have with us Dr. Aqab Malik, expert on foreign affairs and international relations. Aqab, pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time also. But let me start off from you, Nasir Khan Sahab. Now, obviously, the challenges, these challenges have always been there. Now, there's a new regime, there's a new government in place. Perhaps other than Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and GDA, all other parties are a part of it. Now, so having said that, when you talk about Pak-US relationship, and there's been a lot of debate going on that perhaps a step towards China or step towards Russia means a step away from the United States of America. Pakistan has always believed that they are not in any bloc politics. Now, looking at the current scenario, Nawaz Sharif Saab's party is in power. Shehbaz Sharif is the Prime Minister. How do you see things moving forward, sir? Do you think it is true that the relationship between two countries is not based on individuals? Perhaps it's more than that, a lot more than that. Your take.
Well, the relationship is always based on common interests. And right now, there is a certain amount of mending that the new government will have to do, because the perceptions are that it is almost at an all-time low. Now, what we need to understand from Pakistan's perspective, that although China is extremely important to us, when we talk about trade, and you were talking about the economy, we must realize that the trade between Pakistan and China is about $17 billion, out of which we export only $2.5 billion to China. Whereas if you look at the United States, our exports are more than $6 billion. When you look at the European Union, it's something like $9.6 billion. And apart from this, the influence that the United States can exert on countries like Canada or Australia or the non-EU countries in Europe is also something that can damage Pakistan's economy. So that is something very, very important. Now coming back to what exactly it is that the US might want from us. Well, very recently in the Ukraine conflict, obviously it wanted virtually everybody to be on board with them in condemning Russia.
That's correct.
In participating in the sanctions and things like that. Now, we also have certain priorities and certain considerations and certain compulsions. But as far as the United States' overall policy towards Pakistan is concerned, I feel since their exit from Afghanistan, our importance on its own has diminished somewhat. In fact, this whole region is less important for them. They are concentrating, the Biden administration is concentrating on the Indo-Pacific pivot.
Correct.
So what is important for them is, as somebody said, from Wagah to Wellington, which doesn't include our side. But where does Pakistan possibly have an importance? You see, the Biden administration is keen to have the JCPOA renewed. And so relations with Iran for them are more important, and because of the shortage and the crisis of oil, increasingly so. The other aspect is that you see, in this overall US policy, now we are talking about the great power game between the US and China. So there is a part of the administration, part of the State Department that does believe that it is in their interest to improve relations with China. In both these cases, whether it is getting closer to Iran or having a better relationship with China, Pakistan can certainly play a role.
You need to play your cards wisely.
Yes.
I guess that is the most important factor.
But the Americans know this. They know the importance of China, of Pakistan, in case they want to get closer to these two countries.
Now, Naazir Saab, do you think that the current government now that is in place, the Prime Minister is Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, known as a very good administrator, not only an administrator, but being the Chief Minister, he's been going to so many foreign countries, and he has got some very personal relationship with people like Mr. Erdogan, for that matter. Even Saudi government also, the Saudi, I would say the family, they're very close to Sharifs, and we have witnessed that in past. I still remember when me and Nawaz Sharif Saab took charge in 2013. Ishaq Dar Saab was the finance minister, and there was this grant, not a grant, there was a gift given to Pakistan worth $1.5 billion. If you remember, and Ishaq Saab was saying that this is neither a loan nor a grant, this is a gift from the Saudis. So we do understand that they get very personal at certain levels, so which benefits Pakistan also. But sir, looking at the current scenario, let's talk about Pakistan-US. Do you see any chance of improving the ties between these two countries? Because I would say that the spokesperson from the United States, I mean, they issued a very positive statement that perhaps Mr. Joe Biden is going to call the new incoming Prime Minister. If that is the case, I'm sure it's a very positive sign.
I think I'm pretty sanguine about future prospects with United States and with other countries also. First of all, as Nasir Ali Khan Sahab also mentioned, overall, foreign policy remains overall in any country remains almost the same. Because there are not only the government or the prime minister who decide the policy, there are other centers of power also who play a role in that. So, for example, American policy, whether it is Republican or Democrats, their overall national interest remains the same. But of course, there are minor changes. And those minor changes depend greatly on the personality who is leading the show. And in parliamentary democracies, this is the prime minister and foreign minister. Unfortunately, previously we have seen that our foreign policy, I think, in the past 4 years took major jolts, and those major jolts were caused by not handling foreign policy properly. And as if you look at, I am not saying this because the previous government is out, this I have been saying when they were in power also. Foreign policy you cannot address in a way you address a public meeting. The problem with our former foreign minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi was that his speech style was as if he is addressing a public gathering. When you internationally communicate with other people, there are other considerations also. You need a more balanced personality, diplomatic way. He made such blunders with Saudi Arabia. For example, once he said that if you don't support us in Kashmir, we will look for other venues. I mean, this is like threatening Saudi Arabia, which was our senior partner, senior friend, one of the oldest friends that we had, and a couple of other examples, but let's forget about that. Now what we need, I think Pakistan's relationship with the United States will depend a lot on Afghanistan again. In what sense? In the previous government, Pakistani previous government emerged as a vocal advocate of the Taliban government. They tried, though of course everybody agrees that there is a humanitarian crisis and Afghanistan needs humanitarian help. This is one side. So we should not back down. We should say that there is a crisis in your neighboring country and other countries should help. But a perception that has been created lately is that we are an advocate of Taliban, and the Taliban policy will greatly determine the violation of human rights by the Taliban regime cannot be condoned in any way. And in all indications are there that the present Taliban government has also not learned any lesson from the previous experiences.
But we were expecting that there is going to be a change.
We were expecting, but if you look at their regime from 96 to 2001, whatever they did, they are repeating almost the same mistakes. So as a country, as a neighboring country, Pakistan's success will depend on somehow persuading the Afghan regime, because there is no chance in the near future that in Afghanistan there will be a regime change. Nobody can change Taliban. I think Taliban are there now for a long haul. At least 5 to 10 years they are there.
So no elections, nothing.
Nobody can change it. So if Taliban are going to be there, the best option for this region is somehow to persuade the Taliban regime to stop their human rights violation, and rather than being that regressive in their approach, they need to show a relatively positive outlook to the world. If we manage that, and if the new government, Shehbaz Sharif government, and whoever becomes the new foreign minister, if Pakistan manages to give a positive signal that we are no more condoning whatever is happening in Afghanistan, this is one. Secondly, I also think, of course, our national interests are there, but Russia is an aggressor now. Nobody can deny this fact. Ukraine did not attack Russia. Russia attacked Ukraine. So at least verbally, when there is an aggression, of course, that does not mean when you condemn an aggressor, that does not mean that you immediately go and join the war there. At least verbally, aggression should be condemned. So I think our chief of army staff lately, when you see he did the right thing when he highlighted.
How many times the Western countries or the European countries in particular have condemned the Indian aggression in Kashmir, or even on Pakistan for that matter?
That is the point. So if we condemn Indian aggression in Kashmir, Russian aggression in Ukraine should equally be condemned. If that is two wrongs,
do not make a right.
Do not make a right. So this is the second point. So what I am relating Pakistan's foreign policy, one, with Afghanistan, how we approach Afghanistan. Number two, how we approach Russia. Thirdly, with China. China is our senior partner, but again, as rightly pointed out with the statistics, statistics, that China is helping us in CPEC, and that CPEC is playing an important role. But if you look at our international trade, foreign policy is directly related with our economy. Our independence.
It's called economic diplomacy now.
Yes, so our
Our
foreign policy is directly dependent on our economic policy. So economically, if we are economically weak,
they need to
we need to calculate, we need to reckon what advantage we are getting from where. So as rightly pointed out, that our foreign trade, 90% of our foreign trade is out of China. That is not only America, that is with European Union, that is with Saudi Arabia, that is with UAE. These are the Australia. These are the countries which help us, and most of our diaspora lives there. Most of our remittances,
they come from there.
Our remittances don't come from Russia or China. Our diaspora does not live in Russia or China. Our diaspora lives in America,
that's a very, very important
European Union, raised, Saudi Arabia, UAE. So that's where calculation lies. So unless whoever becomes the new foreign minister, one, a more balanced approach, more diplomatic approach. Secondly, change in Afghan policy, change in Russian policy, and looking at those people who are our trading partners, who are where our diaspora lives and where our remittances come from.
All right, now coming to you, Dr. Aqab, Malik, I'm sure you must have been watching the television channels and must have been following what was going on in Pakistan. There's a government change. Now you will be seeing a new foreign minister. Couple of names are circulating. Few people are saying that it could be Bilawal Bhutto Saab, it could be Shazia Mari Saiba, could be Shari Rehman. You never know. There are a lot of options, by the way, in Pakistan People's Party as well as in PMLN. Now, if I may ask you this question, that at the end of the day, what really matters to me and to everybody else is what is good for Pakistan. Let me start off from there. Do you think that a shift in foreign policy is going to be seen soon? And if so, what would be the most likely the changes that you in fact might witness in the coming days? Your take. Aqab, Malik?
Strategic policies that we have already. There will not be a drastic change because the strategic environment for the past few months has not changed immensely, although in Europe it has. But in the local environment in South Asia related to China, that's quite stable. I think that's going to be relatively the same. Now, in relation to Russia, yes, I think given that Russia was building up its forces along the borders of Ukraine at the time that Imran Khan went to visit Russia, was an indicator that Pakistan didn't carefully analyze the situation in respect to its relations with other countries and the most powerful countries in the world and the Western world, the largest economies, for example. And in this respect, I think it was a dire error that the Prime Minister went there, Imran Khan went there. Obviously, he didn't know that there was going to be an invasion. And abstaining from the vote, even India abstained. So I don't think it's necessary to go full bandwagon and criticize Russia completely. There are other reasons as to why Russia reacted in the way it is. Although, yes, it is an aggression, and I agree that what's happening in Ukraine is a travesty. These suggestions that the Pakistan government can make could be made in a subtle form rather than so overtly to reassure the United States and European countries, especially Poland, Germany, France, and Britain, less likely, to their support in respect to the aggression of the Russians against the Ukraine. But the larger picture is still there. Pakistan has significant strategic relationship with China. It has an economic relation with China, a political relation with China. That I don't think will change because CPEC is still not complete. And we don't want everything to vanish in that respect. I think Pakistan will maintain positive relations with China, and it has to. Just in February, there was an announcement when there was in relation to what was happening with Pakistan and China, um, and in response to a question by a journalist to an American spokesperson, the American said that no country has to choose between the United States and any other country. And specifically in relation to Pakistan and China, that Pakistan does not have to make a decision to choose one side or the other. Pakistan has every right to make relations with every country possible. However, the extent of those relations is what matters here. Um, Pakistan's strategic relationship may come into turmoil or opposition to American relationship with China. And as a result, Pakistan might find itself at odds with the United States in the near future. Um, because Ukraine right now is a focal point, but the larger global picture indicates that Ukraine is one theater in the larger global grand strategy the United States has in its turn towards the Asia Pacific and essentially strategic competition with China. Russia is also a large party, but it's not the main competitor here. China is a competitor. So I think Pakistan has to evaluate its relation with China in a subtle way, not in a drastic effort because it can't afford to do so, but it also um, may have to slightly tune its relationship with China vis-a-vis the United States in strategic terms. And when we talk about strategic terms, we're talking about military pacts, military engagement, military uh, maneuvers and exercises. For example, if Pakistan Navy were to do exercises with the Chinese Navy in South China Sea near Taiwan, that would be seen in a negative light by Washington for sure. So Pakistan has to evaluate its situation, how far it can go with China to make sure that its relationship with the United States is maintained. But that doesn't mean that it has to go all out and deny China. I think the
I
global
think there's going to
policy
be a
and
lot
global
of pressure,
policymaking is a
in
subtle
Pakistan.
form
Things won't
of
be that simple, won't be that easy. And there are a lot of factors, in fact, they play their role in the foreign policy, its development, and the future also. Now, coming to you, Nasir Saab, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they're not having a very great relationship with the United States of America at the same time. Pakistan really depends on these GCC countries, sir. Whenever we went close to Iran, it was perceived very negatively from the other parties. Yemen war is one example right in front of you. Sir, over here, what sort of an engagement do you see? Because what we have learned over a period of time that whenever Mia Nawaz Sharif or his party was in power, they were very close to Saudi Arabia. They had their personal engagements with them. If there was some sort of a problem for Mia Saab, Saudi Arabia would always rescue. And this is what we have witnessed in the past. Now, sir, Mohammed bin Salman is the main man calling the shots in Saudi Arabia. King Salman is there. How do you see this engagement of the new Prime Minister with the Saudis in particular and with the GCC countries in general? And since there is a new government in place, let me call it a new government in Iran also, and perhaps the president, Mr. Raisi, could be their future supreme leader also. If that is the case, if that man is there for some time, how do you see things moving in that direction, sir?
Well, first of all, if you'll allow me, I just want to make a few points
Please
vis-a-vis Afghanistan, because Afghanistan was being discussed
please
and
go
the
ahead.
Taliban government was. My point is that we are not an advocate for the Taliban government as such. We are very concerned about the humanitarian crisis that is about to come in Afghanistan, and we want the world to be aware of it and to help it as much as possible, simply because the effects of that will be on Pakistan in the form of further refugees. As far as Russia is concerned, again, when we are talking about Afghanistan, this problem, that is a commonality of concern as far as Russia is concerned. So in the triad, Russia and China and Pakistan are part of this problem,
Makes
where
sense.
we want to go and solve that. So again, we can never condone the invasion of a sovereign country. I'm talking about Ukraine. But at the same time, we need to look at both sides. As was pointed out, there are certain issues, there are certain red lines that Russia kept talking about.
But they were crossed
Yes,
eventually.
and they were afraid that before those lines are crossed, we need to take action, because in the negotiations leading up to this conflict, they didn't seem to see any flexibility from the Americans. Now coming to the Gulf states, yes, I do believe that our relations with the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia can improve because of certain personal history between the leaders of those countries and the family of Nawaz Sharif and Shehbaz Sharif. But do remember, there was a minor irritant when they wanted us to join the conflict in Yemen. We did not, we kind of disappointed them. So there is this issue, but at the end of the day, it's always good to have somebody who can, fight your case or improve relations in any way. I mean, you have seen how these very states give so much importance to India that they give them some of the highest
Civil
awards and things like that. So again, our relationship should not be to the exclusion of other relationships. And the same would apply to these Gulf states. They will be looking after their own interests. Right now, Mohammed bin Salman was aggrieved and was cross because President Biden had never called him. He called King Salman, but totally ignored him. In fact, he said a few things that, were abrasive about Prince Mohammed bin Salman. But at the end of the day, both these countries are beholden to the United States for their security concerns.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, I think they will again get together in terms of a common interest.
Let's see. Another I would say the most important factor, sir, Kashmir issue and relationship with India. I'm not going to, come up with that slogan, but you know which slogan I'm talking about. Modi welcomed the incoming government, sir. There was a tweet. I'm not sure whether it was correct or not, but at least some sort of a tweet was there. Do you see this relationship improving? Because, sir, it has improved in the past. Mia Saab was labelled as somebody who always would follow a certain line or a certain tone. But, sir, having said that, whatever is happening in Kashmir is not at all acceptable, number one. And secondly, sir, do you see any change as far as these two countries are concerned? Because Modi is there, Modi will be there. Mia Saab is here at least for 1 year or 1.5 years till the time the assembly elects another prime minister after the elections. But let's say 1 year, the next 1 year, 2022, 2023, how do you see these two countries engaging, sir?
I don't see any improvement in Pakistan-India relations as long as Modi is there. And Modi is there, I think, for another term. Because if recent elections are any guide in UP is the largest state, as big as Pakistan.
Other than Punjab, you talk about Goa, UP, Uttarakhand.
Yes.
I mean, the list goes on.
Yes. So all these, again, they sweep. And in fact, though they with reduced majority, but they have won 4 states recently. So this shows that most probably Modi will win next elections also, and he will be in for the 3rd term.
Are we ready for Modi for another 4-5 years?
Well, he derives his popularity through anti-Pakistan and anti-Islam slogans.
There you go.
So that Hindutva has paid off. So the more hatred and the more venom you give to people to take your political advantage, common people, unsuspecting masses, they think that he is the savior and he is doing the right thing, just like Trump did.
Imagine, because of the recent, this issues in India where Muslims were being tortured, they were being killed, their properties were set ablaze, and we all know, even in their own hometown in Gujarat, Himmat Nagar, there's curfew at the moment.
Yes, yes, and all over India now we see, and these are not reports are not exaggerated. In fact, full reports don't come. The kind of situation that is there. So this is one. I don't see, at least for the next 1 or 1.5 years, that present government will be in power. I don't see, because Modi wants to win another election on the basis of anti-Pakistan propaganda and anti-Muslim and Hindu fundamentalism that he has been propagating. So this is one. But number two, what options do we have? I think I also relate this with your previous question was about Pakistan's relations with Gulf states. At the same time, we need to keep in mind that be it Saudi Arabia, UAE or even Iran, they have been enjoying good relations with India. So
all of them actually.
All of them. So our expectation, if we expect Saudi Arabia or UAE or even Iran to come out openly and condemn India, that has not happened, which should have happened, but it has not happened. What that shows? That gives me a feeling that probably for the time being, Kashmir should be put on the back burner in Pakistan's foreign policy.
You think that is going to be acceptable to the Kashmiri people?
Well, Kashmiri people, first of all, we have to
because
look at Pakistan.
They think that
First
Imran Khan,
interest
in
is
fact,
Pakistan's interest.
advocated their case very well. He did talk about Islamophobia, and eventually he ended up getting a huge result on that also. And he's also become he was considered as one of the most popular Muslim leaders, and that is the reason he's been removed. Now, this is the general perception. But when Shehbaz Sharif Sahab is going to be in power, engaging Modi, that is going to be a challenge and a half.
Yes, but the more we talk about, my point is that Kashmir issue has been there for 70 years, at least 70 years, 75 years. And both countries have tried. Pakistan cannot occupy their Kashmir, they cannot occupy our Kashmir, and there is a deadlock, and it is getting worse. So probably the only solution, whenever it comes, I don't see it in a year or two, but whenever it comes, probably accepting the borderline as the final border is probably the only solution, to tell you the truth. That's why
LOC
I think
means the actual
line
border.
of control. So that means, this Kashmir which we have, it becomes Pakistan's province or whatever. Indian Kashmir becomes their state or whatever, they restore the previous status and we move on. Otherwise, what will happen? We will spend another 75 years fighting against each other, shouting at each other, spending a lot of money on arms and ammunition. Our economies, especially Pakistan's economy, is in a nosedive. We need some fundamental change in foreign policy. So we should not expect anymore that Saudi Arabia and UAE, right now what is happening, wherever we go, we talk about Kashmir, and this puts other countries off. We have other things to talk about. So I think that for Pakistan, of course, we love Kashmiri people, they are our brethren, but we have other things to take care of also. Pakistan is a country of 220 million people, and our fundamentally primary interests are our interests. Pakistan's interests, Pakistan economy, Pakistan's people. Of course, we keep talking about Kashmir, but I think that if we push it too far, we will be in a strange relationship with even Gulf friends, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, with Iran. For the sake of relations with these countries, I think Kashmir we should talk about, but not as much as we have been. We should be talking about other things also.
You said we should keep it at the back burner.
Back burner. That's what I think is straightforward.
Good response from you, and then I'll go to Aqab, Malik.
Yes, I'm sorry. I cannot agree to that.
Primarily, I could tell that.
I'm sorry. Primarily because, first of all, it will be a political blunder for Shehbaz Sharif. Secondly,
to begin with.
Sorry?
To begin with.
He would never have the courage to say something like that publicly. If in private he suggests to the Indians that it's time for us to do more for the poor people, as he mentioned in his speech, and that we need to have less acrimony. But I agree with Dr. Nasir when he says that this is something which is doable. They are close to Modi. It is possible that we might get a little bit closer. But to me, the biggest issue right now is the human rights abuses in Kashmir. We cannot keep quiet.
For all of us.
We cannot keep. So if you're talking about Shehbaz Sharif, right now, there is no way that we can keep quiet about what is happening in Kashmir. And then, the International Law Commission, which is part of the United Nations, that there is a clause there it's 22(2)(b or something, which clearly states that any country which tries to change the population of an occupied
Demographic
territory
changes.
is committing an exceptionally grave
Crime.
war crime. So these days you talk a lot about war crimes. There is a clear case for that. This is a disputed and occupied territory, and they are making concerted efforts to change the demographics of Kashmir. This is something we cannot keep silent on. We must.
I think we will get to know in the coming days that what exactly is the approach of the government.
Yes.
But Dr. Aqab, Malik, your comment on the Pak-Indo relationship.
Well, I partially agree with the previous speakers. Kashmir is a boiling point for Pakistan. I think because we've pushed this agenda for many years, it's intertwined within the mindset and the national psyche within the population. I think deterring or going away from this and making peace based on the current borders, whether it's preferable or not is not the point. The point is that in this current 1 year that Shehbaz Sharif will be there, it's not going to happen. I think Shehbaz Sharif is also a political animal. He needs to, or he will be thinking about re-election as a foremost aspect of his tenure as Prime Minister. He will be thinking about how he gets more votes and secures his position to continue as Prime Minister. That's what's really going to happen. And let's not pander about this now. The fact of the matter is that whatever he does as Prime Minister, in line with his coalition partners, no doubt, who want to secure better polling in the elections next year, if there are elections next year. We don't know what's going to happen exactly, but if we project this, that they're all going to be worried about that. Now, Imran Khan will be able to build up momentum again, and we've got to consider that. So I think that playing the Kashmir card and thinking that there's going to be peace is a non-entity. It's not going to happen, not in the short term, maybe in the long term. And as one of the previous speakers said, whilst Modi is still the Prime Minister of India, I don't think there's going to be any headway as far as Kashmir is concerned. Words saying that he congratulates Pakistan for the new premiership, etc., and Shehbaz Sharif are words of consolation, but they're not going to change strategic realities on the ground as far as Kashmir is concerned in relation to what India wants. India has used Kashmir aggressively amongst its population. Hindwata is one, and it's an important aspect of Hindwata in that respect, and part of the integrity of India as far as Modi and Hindwata is concerned. So there's not going to be a drastic change as far as the Indians are concerned. I don't think we should beg India to have peace, etc. We have to sustain our strategic lines. We have to sustain our strategic territory, maintain borders as well as we can, and any aggression from India must be met with proportional response. That's what's going to happen and the military is not going to change in this respect just because of the government for
And
a year.
especially after the incident of 27th Feb, I mean, I think we really parted ways. But one quick comment I would like all three gentlemen to answer this. The question, let's start off from you, Aqab Malik. It is generally believed that, and Nasir Saab and Naazir Saab also agree, that your internal policy is the reflection of your external policy. Now, when we look inwards, I mean, there is going to be a very strong opposition for the incoming government, sir. There is going to be a lot of problem for them, by the way, because if the people are on roads, I mean, Imran Khan believes that he should get into the election campaign mode. And if that is the case, he's already resigned, there is no opposition. I mean, that is also another problem and a half. So, within these circumstances, how do you see Shehbaz Sharif moving forward? Because I think there will be enormous challenges, so many obstacles on his way. Dr. Aqab, let's start off from you.
I was reading a report by Moody's, the economic forecaster, regarding Pakistan's economic situation, and they indicate that the economy will be moving forward with about 3, 4, maybe up to 5% growth rate. That is a positive in the respect that it's not going to go into contraction unless something drastic happens. But I think that can change. because I'm not sure if they really appreciate the momentum that Imran Khan will try to make out of what he feels is a personal slight. It's personal for him. It's not just about the nation. It's about him being pushed out of power. And with any leader of any major country that's been there for a while, they want to cling on to it. Now he's going to want it back, and he knows he's got support around the country. I don't think anybody really appreciates the mass movement that can occur as far as Imran Khan is concerned. The largest party in the House, and they've resigned. What does that indicate? That this parliament here will not be as successful as it would have been if it was an elected parliament. So this is seen by PTI supporters and sympathizers and their members as a coup. In that respect, they're going to have full opposition, and they're going to rile up this opposition as the time goes by, and that will build pressure upon Shehbaz Sharif and the other coalition partners in the new government, which will wrangle potential policy, and it's continuous.
All right.
I think some compromise may be made because of that. So it is going to be upheaval for the forthcoming months. And I think we can't really predict anything because something's
I
going
think
to be
next few months are really important.
But if a fire
All right,
ignites,
Dr. Aqab, sorry to cut you here because we'll be running out of time. Nasir Saab.
Well, the two challenges that the new Prime Minister will be facing is one of unity within his own government, because the first conflict may occur in forming the cabinet itself. There might be certain problems there. And secondly, to be able to prove to the public in this short period that he would be better as far as the economy of the
He's a better
country
candidate,
is
basically.
concerned. Now we can see when oil is at $140 a barrel, even if you have a growth of 5%, already inflation is 11%.
12.7 in the last month.
Yeah, so it more than eats up into the growth. But the other point that concerns me is that in his speech, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif mainly tried to, when he said, I want to tell you what solutions I have, he talked about increasing, for example, the minimum wage
To 25,000.
25,000
I think that's a very good step.
Yes, it's a good step, but try and understand one thing.
Even the pensions
It
by
will
10%.
have an inflationary effect, because if I'm an industrialist and I'm paying my employees that much more,
How about your interest rate, sir?
the price, yes, the price of my product will go up. So inflation will go up. The other important thing is, again, we will be less competitive as far as our exports are concerned, because our exports will cost us more. That's one thing. The other one, which I agree with to some extent, is giving a subsidy when he talked about cheaper atta for the poorer people. I agree with
Sir,
that.
they had the
as long
Sasti
as-
Roti program also, that was a failure. So I think
Yes,
there has to be something
yes, but
different this time.
At the moment, if he does manage to give you cheaper atta to the poor people, it will go a long way into, towards alleviating their misery. However, you do have to have the money for it. He needed to explain that. And finally, it seems to me that in the speech, he did not talk about the most important things, and that is to reduce the current account deficit, to reduce
So
the...
most likely in the upcoming budget, because when you look at that challenge, I think that is a mega challenge, the biggest challenge. Because I think only the time will tell. I really need to see what's going on in the next couple of months, perhaps 2 months rather, because this is almost the mid of April and you're talking about May and then June. Not even 2 months. So I think that is going to be the real challenge for Mr. Shehbaz Sharif. So your take, the final comment from you.
Well, I will confine myself to foreign policy. I think the immediate challenge for the present government is to rectify the damage that has been done. Major damage by this conspiracy theory that has been floating, that there was a
Shehbaz Sharif said
letter.
that let's look into it.
Yes, let's look into it. The Prime Minister,
As a
rightly
Prime
offered-
Minister, does he have the authority to see the letter and
Of course, the Prime Minister,
and
of
even
course.
make a commission?
Of course, a Prime Minister, top office holders do have a right. I mean, if they can't see, who can see?
Exactly, that's
so,
what I'm saying.
and the letter that was sent by our ambassador, that was also meant for the Prime Minister. So, that letter should be discussed, and it should be clarified, because this narrative of PTI and Imran Khan, I'm sorry to say, has done a lot of damage. Other countries don't like it when this diplomatic channel communication is comes in public domain. Such
So
things
the
are
public is really buying this particular idea that America was behind ousting Imran Khan.
well.
Now,
That's
if you look at the reaction of the public and the kind of placards they were holding and the kind of
this is going to do a major
Speeches that
damage.
were
I
made
think
to-
Imran Khan is doing a very disservice to this country and to this country's foreign policy. He should stop this, and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif should immediately make a commission and clarify the position.
this should be looked
Yes,
into, because
yes.
this is the real
this
bone
is,
of
I think, the
contention
first
between,
task to.
I would say this is going to be the real bone of contention between Pakistan and the United States of America.
Oh yes.
Uh,
So this needs.
if this is not, sort out
So
the
this
right
needs to
way.
be clarified.
Anyway, Dr. Saab, thank you so much. Ambassador, it was a pleasure having
Thank
you, sir.
you.
And thank you so much, Dr. Aqab Malik, for your presence as well. And that's all we have for this up. I'll see you tomorrow at 8:05. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.